Welcome to the Siren Podcast. Congressman Eric Swalwell, now gubernatorial candidate in the great state of California. This is so exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you. We stepped up as a state for Prop 50. I called it Prop Fairness. It wasn't just saving California, it was saving the country. But as I went across the state, particularly going into Republican areas where we needed to flip House seats, I saw that people are scared, prices are high, and they were asking for a fighter protector. And I've taken on Donald Trump helping Adam Schiff lead the Russia investigation, was asked by Nancy Pelosi to help lead the impeachment. I still have, Joe, as you know, the only surviving lawsuit against Donald Trump for what he did on January 6th. So I've taken this guy on in every realm, in every way, and he's declared war on Californians. And so I will fight and protect for them, but also attack the cost crisis that we're facing, particularly as it relates to housing and just how few houses we have and how much it costs for those who can even compete.
I'm Eric Swalwell, and it's this simple. The next governor of California has two jobs. One, keep the worst president in our history out of our homes, out of our streets, and out of our lives.
Buying food at the grocery store is getting more expensive.
No one will keep Californians safer than I will. No one. Nancy Pelosi selected me for the Intelligence Committee and to help lead the impeachment of a corrupt president. Californians will never bend the knee. And two, bring us a new California. California is the fourth largest economy in the world. So shouldn't we be a state where you can take your first job, have your first kid, and buy your first home in the same decade? And one where you can fill that home with food and flood it with light. I'm Eric Swalwell. We can build ourselves a new California that we can share in together.
Yeah, you said it's time to bring a get shit done approach to rebuild Altadena and California's fire affected communities. This approach is so refreshing, but it's also like roll up your sleeves and actually get shit done, obviously, let's talk about that.
Yeah, well, it's inspired by work I did as a city council member. So long before I was ever in anyone's home on a MSNBC interview, I was a Dublin city council member in my hometown and a planning commissioner before then. Dublin, when I grew up in the 90s, was a town of low incomes and low expectations. Only 25% of us who graduated Dublin High School went on to college. And so when I came back after law school, I'd always carried like this chip on my shoulder because we were nicknamed Scrublin by the other towns around us. And I didn't like that, and I wanted better for us. And so I worked with fellow leaders in town to bring in builders and developers and labor to have growth that expanded affordable and market housing, to not just be fast food restaurants like in our town, but to have like higher end restaurants and retail, to attract high end employers so paychecks were bigger. And over, the last 15 to 20 years, that high school, by the way, 96% of its graduates go to college. We have Fortune 500 employers in and around the community. The only thing I hear about as far as complaints in the community is too much traffic and the schools are overcrowded. And I would have killed to have had those problems growing up there because nobody really wanted to come to Dublin and no one wanted to go to the schools. But we expected that the developers, if they were going to build in our community, they would build new schools, they would build new firehouses, new ballparks, senior housing, and the like. And so that's a model I want to project across the whole state, to go from Scrublin to Dublin.
What are some of the challenges that Californians are facing right now? I'm guessing that it's not exclusive to California, but what are some of the challenges that they're facing and what are the ways you'll address those?
Well, let's talk about seniors, for example. As I was knocking on doors for Prop 50, I saw so many, widows who live in 4-bedroom, 2-bath homes that they felt prisoner to. They would love to live in, affordable senior housing, but because of the capital gains penalty, it's hard for them to move. And so as governor, I will work to allow them to defer or have another way for us to transfer that penalty in a way that they don't, uh, you know, they don't remain stuck in a home. And what you do is you open up more inventory for new young family first time home buyers. I'll declare a cost crisis on day one and make sure that in every single part of the state, just as the governor has done in Altadena and the Palisades, we will have every agency that is making a decision on new housing projects, they have to say yes or no within 90 days. So again, to just accelerate the supply of new housing. Small business growth. We are one of the lowest in the country as it relates to new small businesses. And so we are going to give a tax holiday to every small business, not big businesses, small businesses for their first 3 years so they can focus on starting their business, hiring employees, going from revenue, just being post revenue to being post profitable. And what that will do is it'll bring in more business to business revenue for every business in the surrounding ecosystem. And we will be, a state that is open for business. Those businesses hopefully survive. And then you create, many, many new revenue streams for the states and the services we have to provide. And so, really taking on those issues of, costs being too high, paychecks being too low. That's going to be my priority because that's what I'm hearing from Californians.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm sure we just had a gubernatorial election here in New Jersey. Thankfully, that went overwhelmingly in the right direction. But we did see this issue of affordability really being the centerpiece of the election. But also, Mikey Sherrill was very clear, as you are in the opening of your launch for your campaign, about standing up to Donald Trump. And I think that in this extraordinary moment in time, that has to be part of what you're offering the people because it's been horrific. And you said it earlier, he's really gone after California and it seems spiteful. It seems personal. How will you stand up to Donald Trump?
Yeah, so people are running through the fields where they work. We have troops in the street. He's pulled cancer funding, right? I mean, to me, a budget's not just a moral document, it's an IQ test. And it has to be the dumbest fucking idea in the world to think that the 40% of Americans who will get a cancer diagnosis should have less hope rather than more hope, or that you'd want to kill cancer research rather than kill cancer. So to address what he's doing, yes, of course, I will make sure we enforce the laws in our state and hold ICE accountable, if they break them. But we have to create a California research fund because we cannot count on the federal government. He has taken so many of those dollars away. And so what I will do is leverage my relationships, not just across America, but across the world, and make the case to bet on and invest in California. The return on investment for Californians will be lower healthcare costs, lower energy costs, more opportunity. But the return on investment for those investors, will be greater than anywhere else they can invest because we know that we have the intellectual capital that has powered, research and development in this tech and biotech economy. So you're going to have to be a champion for California in a new, inventive way that no governor in the past has had to do because of how punitive this president has been toward us.
You have been received with a ton of excitement and press, but not just with the media and, influencers or pundits, et cetera, but the people of California. You had a town hall in Orange County and they had to say no to people.
Yeah, we had about 500 people show up in Orange County and we had a wait list. And I'm sorry for the folks that weren't able to make it. I promise, to come back. In my favorite part about public service is I call it like being in the round and, just talking to Californians, but it's an ask me anything environment where every question is unscreened. We literally give everybody a raffle ticket and then somebody pulls the tickets out and anyone who wants to, could be called upon to ask a question. So I don't know what the questions are. I always ask them a question myself. I tell them, if you're comfortable, please tell me what is bringing the most stress to you in your life. And that's how, to answer your earlier question, I've put together our new California vision. It's inspired and informed by what people are telling me are bringing them the most stress. But I want to be the most accessible campaign out there. So I'm going to be in San Diego on December the 2nd and doing the same thing and just getting across the state. I'll be in Fresno about, a week after that. And so we'll cover the state. It's a big state, but it's very fulfilling and helpful for me to talk to Californians that way.
The last question I have before we say goodbye is you're a father of young kids. You have 3 kids under 8 years old. I'm a mom of a tween and a teenager. How do your children shape your political decisions?
So I try and govern a lot around what I am living. When I first got elected, I was, a child sent to the Congress. I was 31 years old. And, I was probably at that point almost 10 years, approaching 10 years out of college. And student loan debt was front of mind. And I was a real champion on student loan debt and working and wrote legislation to make the interest rate zero so that you saw student loan debt as at least an investment in people and you didn't, add more debt because of the interest. Now, as a father of three, with, married to somebody who also works full time, childcare is so important in our lives that, if we don't have it, nothing else can happen. And so, seeking in California to have, more, cost-friendly childcare options and a childcare, tax credit for California families will be a priority for me. Also, as it relates to young families, you should be able to take your first job, have your first kid, and buy your first home in the same decade. And that's my promise to Californians. Right now, the average first-time home buyer is 40 years old, and we're gonna move that down into the 30s. And I say that because the greatest source of wealth for most Americans is home ownership. It's not, invested in the stock market. It's not, entrepreneurialism, which is great for those who can do it. But for most Americans, like my parents, when I was 14 and they were finally able to buy their first home, that was how they were able to have some sense of wealth and doing better than the generation before. And that's always going to guide me, as a parent, understanding that that's what other parents expect out of their own hustle.
Yeah, I think you can only understand that perspective if you've walked that walk, right? Thank you so much, Congressman. You've been serving the people of California and the United States since you were elected in 2012, and I appreciate that. And I thank you for being a firebrand and a champion, and for the accountability that you are demanding from the Trump administration, and for your tireless fight. Thank you so much for joining me, and best of luck in your campaign.
Thanks, Jeff.